Welcome to Faith and Freedom. For the next few minutes, we hope to inform, inspire, and encourage you as we discuss legal victories and challenges to your fundamental freedom and religious liberties. Faith and Freedom comes to you from Liberty Counsel, a civil liberties education and legal defense organization. Join us now as Matt Staver, founder and chairman of Liberty Counsel, explains the latest legal issues all across this country. In the courtrooms of America, Liberty Counsel is winning the battle for your constitutional freedom.
A Texas judge rules that Texas cheerleaders can continue to display religious-themed banners. We're going to be talking about it on Faith and Freedom. I'm Matt Staver, founder and chairman of Liberty Counsel. Joining me is Matt Barber, vice president of Liberty Counsel Action. Matt, this judge in Texas issued originally a temporary restraining order. Now he's actually entered an injunction that's going to stay in effect pending this entire case until they come up to a summary judgment at the end of the day or some kind of trial. But this is a real victory for these Texas cheerleaders because they were ultimately prohibited by the school from displaying these scripture messages periodically on their signs as they're out there cheerleading. It was their words, their ideas. It wasn't the school sponsoring these words or messages. It was the cheerleaders. And so the judge ultimately ruled that these cheerleaders had their rights to free speech infringed when the school tried to stop them from displaying these scripture verses.
Yeah, if anybody who's from Texas or knows anyone from Texas, I was born there, my dad born and raised there. The old saying, don't mess with Texas. Well, don't mess with Texas and don't mess with the First Amendment either. And this judge has done the right thing. And boy, these cheerleaders got some support in high places. Governor Rick Perry came out and spoke in their defense of their First Amendment rights. They had picked verses like Philippians 4:13, I can do all things through Christ, which strengthens me. They'd put it on a banner. Again, as you mentioned, Matt, student-initiated. The football players would run through the banner perfectly within their constitutional rights to do that, and it is unconstitutional for the administration to try to prevent them from doing that. So this is a tremendous victory for the First Amendment.
It really is. And in fact, I think at the end of the day, the school probably wasn't that much opposed to the message, but they got a letter from the Freedom from Religion Foundation, a radically anti-God secularist organization out of Madison, Wisconsin. They got a letter from that organization complaining about the scripture verses or the religious language that sometimes the cheerleaders used on their cheerleading signs, and they created themselves. So as a response to that particular letter of complaint, the school then told the cheerleaders, you can't do this anymore. Stop using the scripture and religious language. And I think the school probably was reacting out of the fact that they were concerned that they might get sued. Anyway, the teachers, the school, then became a defendant because the cheerleaders actually sued them for the violation of their First Amendment rights to free speech. And in fact, the school district before the court said, we encourage any student or parent with children in the public schools coming into contact with this religious practice at a public school functions to they basically said that they encourage the court, I should say, not to rule that, quote, the Establishment Clause should not be interpreted so as to require defendants, the school, to bar the religious banners. In other words, they didn't want the court to rule that they were required by the Establishment Clause. They wanted to just simply be allowed to be able to censor them, but they didn't want to be required by the Establishment Clause. Right. So in other words, they weren't defending it real strongly, it doesn't look like. At any rate, the good news is the temporary restraining order was entered. Now an injunction has been entered, and these cheerleaders will be able to continue the rest of their football season as they were before.
Well, one of the banners they had, Matt, if God is for us, who can be against us? And that was one I think that, for instance, the Freedom from Religion Foundation complained about, saying that this discriminated against atheists. But it's interesting to me how we see groups like the Freedom from Religion Foundation, the ACLU, and others who insist that we have an absence of any public expression of religious faith and instead supplant and replace that with their own faith, which is a humanist or an atheist faith. And that is faith. It takes just as much faith to believe that there is no God as it does to believe clearly that there is a God. So what they're trying to do is use little loopholes and misinterpret and misapply the First Amendment in order to force the government to adopt an official state religion, that religion being secular humanism or anti-theism.
That's right. And the good news is that we got a great ruling from the judge, and the Freedom from Religion Foundation has been rebuffed in this situation. And there may well be other schools that are doing the very same thing, and I think they've got a precedent now to follow that the schools need to be careful not to censor these cheerleaders because it's private speech. It's not government speech. When you go out there and you see these cheerleaders doing their cheers, no one ever thought for a moment that the principal or the superintendent is telling them what to cheer, giving them the signs to cheer with. I mean, everyone knows that in high school, these cheerleaders are making up their own cheers. They're writing their own signs. They're spending time. It's their own individual speech. They spend a lot of time on their own personal time where they're practicing these cheers, and they're going out there and trying to cheer up the crowd. And here, what we also had is not only a great victory, but we also had, as you mentioned, Governor Rick Perry. He weighed in on the side of the cheerleaders. The top law enforcer, the Attorney General for the state of Texas, Greg Abbott, he weighed in. He also said that it was a violation of free speech and came down on the side of the cheerleaders as well.
Governor Perry said this: anyone who is expressing their faith should be celebrated. From my perspective, in this day and age of instant gratification, this me-first culture that we see all too often, Perry said, we're a nation built on the concept of free expression of ideas. We're also a culture built on the concept that the original law is God's law, outlined in the Ten Commandments, and good on Governor Perry for speaking that truth fearlessly. And Matt, I want to thank personally the Freedom from Religion Foundation, because every time it seems that they initiate one of these frivolous attacks, and they're hungry for press and media attention, clearly, but every time something like this gets out, people become educated. My hope is that cheerleaders across the country will now follow suit and start doing what these cheerleaders were doing, start expressing their religious faith and do it in the same context as these cheerleaders. They have every right to do, and thank you to the Freedom from Religion Foundation for letting the nation know that they have the right to do this.
Well, the Freedom from Religion Foundation, they say that they are the nation's largest association of free thinkers, and in parentheses they say atheist, agnostics, close parentheses. Now, I guess a free thinker you can only be a free thinker if it's non-theist. If you're someone who believes in God, then you're not a free thinker. It sounds like to me that that's not being a free thinker. Free thinker ought to be able to think freely. But this is a radical, secularist, atheist organization. It's not a separation of church and state organization. It's in a different category than the ACLU. This particular organization is bent on one thing, and that is hatred toward God, particularly Christianity. And this organization tries to use the courts to ultimately push its agenda. They have been sending out a lot of letters this year to a lot of different places, and unfortunately sometimes these letters have the desired effect for them, as it did here. The letter ultimately resulted in the district stopping the cheerleaders. The good thing is the cheerleaders weren't going to stand for it, and they rebuffed it, and they came back and filed suit. If you know of letters from the Freedom from Religion Foundation or from other organizations like Americans United for Separation of Church and State, particularly that organization has sent them out to pastors trying to silence them, saying that they can't talk about anything political, otherwise they'll lose their tax exemption, which is not true. Give Liberty Counsel a call at 1-800-671-1776.
Matt, Scripture says the fool says in his heart, there is no God. And I think we see that Scripture playing itself out in the actions of people like the Freedom from Religion Foundation and so forth. They're foolish actions in attacking the First Amendment, trying to undermine the First Amendment, and in so doing, helping, giving us the opportunity to educate people about what their rights actually entail. So my hope is that they'll continue to do this, but you're right. People, in order for them not to be successful, people need merely stand up, and that's what you do. When someone tries to bully you, you stand up to the bully and tell them no, and you'll often find that the bully wilts and crumbles and runs off with his tail between his legs.
Well, and the Proverbs also says that he who states his case first seems right until another comes and challenges him. And if only Freedom from Religion is stating their case and we're not there to challenge, then guess who ultimately wins that day? That's why you need to get involved in this ministry, help us to be able to be in every one of these areas where these controversies arise so that we can, in fact, challenge and set the truth straight. You can go to Liberty Counsel's website for more information. Sign up at Liberty Counsel's website, lc.org, for our Liberty Alert email and also our Grassroots Action email. There's a lot of other resources there as well, including our Patriots Handbook on Religious Liberty, one of which deals with the Constitution and the Declaration, another with what pastors and churches can do with regards to political activity, and another regarding the rights of students in public schools. Go to Liberty Counsel's website for more information on voting as well. Get that information out to your friends and vote biblical values. Again, that website is lc.org.
You have been listening to Faith and Freedom with Liberty Counsel. We hope that we have motivated you to stand up for your faith, family, and freedom. We can accomplish a lot when we work together. Get informed and get involved today. Sign up for our free monthly newsletter, The Liberator. We will send it out to you free of charge. Stay informed with our Liberty Alert email updates. Just click on the website at www.lc.org or call us at 1-800-671-1776. Tune in next time to learn more about your rights right here on Faith and Freedom.